The ejector cups are not like rocket science to do. The piece basically threads in. It's kind of a simple concept. You just have to execute. I have the valve cover removals in another video too. So if you need to see that, I'll give you a link to that as well. It's a wonder. It's a miracle. It's a woman. You just pay a little attention to it and it starts working again just like it should. It's only hard to get out because I'm holding a camera. 8 mil. There's a lower bolt. We're gonna get that out. There you go. Now, this piece moves. See? You're gonna go under the valve cover gasket like this. You're gonna go past the wires. We're gonna go up under this metal piece. You go up with that and you go under it with your pry bar. I have my pry bar under the little plate and then just push. It's important to orient this tool so the arrow points toward the valve spring because it's machined to fit over the bolt that's on the upper side. Get these hold down bolts in as tight as you can by hand. The puller nut has to be backed out all the way to the head of the main bolt because you turn the main bolt in to the cup and then you tighten the extraction nut afterwards. Tighten in the main bolt only about 1 full turn. They say 1 to 2 full turns is the most you would do. Turning this extraction nut was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. It kind of seemed like it was going to be extremely difficult, but it's actually the easier part. And the thing just comes out. It pulls the cup right off with no trouble. There's my crack. Right there. I can feel it with my finger. Big fat brush, it's pretty easy. You're basically getting the sides. They're not really going to have that much on them anyway, and they'll already look clean and shiny. So just brush it, and you can kind of tell the brush is actually not big enough for the hole to actually fill it up. So you kind of have to twist like at an angle to try to get all the sides. This face brush is not magic. You have to push down on it pretty hard to get the carbon out. I used carburetor cleaner to try to soften up the carbon on all the ones that had carbon deposits. Some of these cups had like real carbon deposits underneath them, and some of them were totally clean under there. You can hear the popping noises as the carbon is coming off the sides of the little corner there. And you just have to be careful not to damage anything in there. But I had to use a pick because the carbon wouldn't come out with the brush. What I'm using is this cleaning brush that I got in the kit with a paper towel over it. Comes out super clean. That's like the final wipe. I have some doubts about this area. It is so carbony and scratched looking. That's what it looks like. It's all crusty looking around the edges. This is the best we can do. Can't get it any cleaner. Make sure everything is real clean so it can be centered. And put the cup on here. Clean up the mating surface of the cup. Don't forget the arrow on this device points down towards the valve springs. Boy, I hope this thing seals. It's really hard to get this thing in straight. You really can't get this in without making contact on those walls, so you just have to put a lot of that green stuff and hope. Turn in that center press bolt by hand until you feel it make contact, and then you can just use a ratchet. I don't recommend using a power tool for this. The instructions on the Riffraff diesel website say to go to 35 foot-pounds and then continue until you feel like the cup is bottomed out, and you can definitely feel it's a little bit past 35 foot-pounds. Go ahead and back out the center bolt until that O-ring is not seated inside the cup, because if you take out the hold down bolts first, you might have to struggle to try to pull that O-ring grips onto the cup pretty firmly. That's installed. Looks pretty nice, huh? So it's got some of that green stuff around the edges. There you go. You can see the green stuff in there. At this point in the process, you need to wait 12 hours for the injector cup compound to cure completely. And in case you're wondering, I did do all the injector cups on this truck. I wasn't sure if someone had done some or not all. And I just didn't want to bore you guys with having to watch me do all of them, because once you've seen one, you've basically seen them all. I put pressure to the coolant system. I had it really quiet in here. I didn't hear any hissing, so I moved forward. I added the coolant back into the coolant bottle. I want to emphasize that this system pressure on my air compressor is set to 16 psi right now. So I'm not charging this cooling system with 100 psi from the air compressor. I have no idea what that would do, but I'm sure it would blow something in the system. I think that the head is actually lower than the thermostat by just a hair, by just a tiny bit, which means that if that's the case, then the thermostat is relieving the air out of the heads and letting coolant flow in there, because obviously the coolant is up here, so it should be able to go down there as long as there's a way for the air to get out, which I believe the thermostat, you can see where the thermostat is in relation to those injectors, and the coolant runs pretty low in those holes, so they're probably full of fluid. The thermostat on this truck is self-burping, and it has a mechanism to let air through, so it is actually going to let the air up. I'm using my inspection mirror to check these back cups for leaks. I'm not expecting them to have any leaks, externally at least. I suspected there could be a leak going into the combustion chamber, and I wouldn't know because you can't inspect for that. But at least I'll check what I can see. The hold down bolts here are different. They look the same from the top, but this is the upper hold down. This one hides under the injector plug. So you put this one in first in the upper hold down hole, and it looks like you just thread it in all the way. So these are the hold down holes right here, and you want these to be totally clean before you put in this bolt. Same with the bolt, totally clean. You want them to go in buttery smooth. Should be able to go pretty much all the way without struggle. You don't want there to be like grinding or not be able to get it in. And this bolt does go up to the shoulder. So I'm literally just going up to the shoulder with it and setting it. So I'll set all those, blow out all these holes, and then make sure this hole is clear and clean and that the bolts are clean. I just realized this while watching this video. I didn't tell you guys correctly. That bolt needs to be torqued in. Otherwise, you don't know if it's going to back out. You're allegedly supposed to dunk these in oil. I already have new seals on these injectors. I bought the Molly kits. I think the Molly kits are the closest you can get to original equipment without buying Reliant or Motorcraft. Just get that bad boy nice and wet. So you have to make sure that this little bridge right here, if you can see that, how that goes up and over that bolt right there. So yeah, you want that bridge to, because if it's over here, it's not over that bolt. You can clearly see it there going over the bolt, and then it'll drop down. You'll see after I get this injector in. So they tell you to just shove the injector, but you really can't do that. You got to tap it. I just realized I didn't blow out the injector hole, so I'm going to pull this injector and blow that hole, and then I'm going to get it in. Guys, don't be like me and bash your injectors with a hammer. Even a dead blow, it's probably not necessary. Just a couple hits is all you need. I'll show you more in a couple minutes. You can tell after some practice, after you get one in, you can tell how deep the injector is supposed to be to this valve rocker right here. And then the final part of this is obviously putting this bolt in. The problem is, if you're putting this bottom bolt in, you might not be able to get it to even start until the injector is a certain depth. So you have to kind of figure that out, because you have to get this injector to drop a little bit before you can really start this bolt. If you use an extension, your torque will be wrong. The extension will end up making you not tight enough. I'll give you some tips and pointers here. So one pointer is that when you're tapping these, don't tap them with a brass hammer. I didn't like that. It was making brass dust. So I stopped doing that, and then I started hitting it with my hand, and I was able to get this one in just far enough to basically adjust my hold down plate and then start that bottom bolt. Once I was able to start the bottom bolt, I was able to start threading that in very carefully, and it was pulling down the injector into the slot. But you do have to get the injector started. You can't just set it up there and start the thread, because it won't, basically you won't be mated to this top bolt and this bottom bolt at the same time. You might start the bottom bolt, and then the top bolt is actually, the plate is on top of the bolt, and so it won't hold down anything. Be careful with that. Don't damage these injectors too much. If you beat them up with a hammer, somebody's going to be like, hey, these are probably bad injectors, and then you're going to have to replace them. So yeah, and then the other tip is, when you're using a torque wrench, do not go fast. When you go slow with the torque wrench, you actually get more turn before it clicks. It's usually got like a little bit of extra. If you're really gentle, it'll tighten the bolt a tiny bit more. At this point, if you didn't remove your glow plugs, you need to remove them. The glow plug holes, there you go, right there to the right of this injector. That's where the oil and stuff is going to come out when you're going to purge the combustion chamber, because you don't want to have this thing trying to combust with like a couple ounces of fluid in there. So for my purposes, I am going to put the valve covers on. I don't want oil squirting out everywhere. There's probably going to be a lot. I did forget to mention, make sure you blow out these holes. These are going to matter a lot later when you're putting the valve cover on permanently. So since you're putting the valve cover gasket, this is going to block you from blowing out those holes. You're going to want to blow those out now so you can know for sure that those threads are clean. Make sure that these little connectors right here are blown out and clean, because if these have oil in them, and these yellow ones too, they'll end up having a code. It'll be an injector contribution balance code, and even though they're firing, there's an electrical fault because of all the oil in there. I had that happen before, and I had to take the valve covers off again.
So like I said, clean these out good, put brake cleaner in these, and blow them out best you can. On both sides, I have one of these bolts on each corner to prevent these valve covers from just flying off when the oil starts shooting out. It's not a bad time to check glow plugs. My glow plugs are good. I just put them in. Hook up your multimeter. You're gonna go to the one that looks like a Wi-Fi symbol that's sideways, and it might have this little omega symbol there. If you don't know what that is, you can look up omega, but also you can just look up ohms symbol online if you don't know what that is. All you're gonna do is take 2 leads. The way these work is power goes in from this top post right here, and it goes through the actual threads to ground. So I know it looks like a continuous piece of metal, but it's actually insulated from itself, and the power goes down through the element and then back up and through these threads. So all you do is touch up here on this post and down here anywhere. And I'm getting 0.2. Check every one. 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0, 0.2, there we go. Interesting. The readings on this are all over the place. It's better at the threads. 0.2, 0.2, 0.6, counting down, counting down, counting down. This one has different numbers on it. What if this is the glow plug that was exposed to antifreeze? 0, 0, 0.1, 0.2. I don't know why I'm trying so hard to get a good outcome on this. This seems like a bad glow plug to me. 0. It's questionable. 0.2, 0.2. That's funny. Well, I could always try going the correct direction with this. So hot is going to be the post, which is red, and then black is going to be the threads. See, it's getting 0.5. Readings on this thing are all over the map. 0.3, 0.4. I think this glow plug is bad. It's got a different reading than all the rest. Fortunately, I've got a nice brand new Motorcraft glow plug right here. What a coincidence, huh? Let's check this one. 0.2. There we go. These are all new anyways, but I think the coolant must have eaten this one up. Because what happened is the truck was pulling coolant into the diesel, you know, and you'd notice that when you start it up because the smoke and the struggle. We'll save that anyways. I know that probably still glows. Drop them. Thread them in without a ratchet. Those threads always stay really nice. I don't know why. Just clean off the threads on the glow plugs before you go in with them. There. Just tight, nothing crazy. Tight. You don't want them to be ruined, you know. There you go, tight is tight. And it's kind of hard to line these wires up because the wire has to go down far beyond where your fingers can reach. When you are installing the glow plug wire right there, you can see the glow plug wire, right? Basically, I grab that wire with a needle nose plier. I use a flashlight to help me see the glow plug. Once I get it lined up, I either push down with the pliers or I insert my finger and I shove down with my finger. Usually the pliers, the needle nose pliers, are the best option. You need good visibility to line these up. You're not going to be able to do it blind.
I'm hooking up the main harness connector because I want to run this truck with the valve covers off and make sure everything is all working, make sure all the connections to the injectors are good, so forth and so on, make sure there's oil coming out of the spouts. It's probably a good thing that it wouldn't start the first couple tries. I forgot to disconnect my pressure setup from this, or yeah, to connect the actual coolant bottle back to the return line.
Having trouble getting it to start, so I've got my charger hooked up. Just give it a little extra life in the batteries. I made sure that my main harness was connected and my injectors were connected. I verified the oil reading on that gauge right there is up, so that's good. When I'm cranking, that means it's got low pressure, but there's still air in the high pressure lines. So we're just gonna let it catch up on a quick charge, and we're gonna try again. I am looking in the side view mirror for smoke to be coming out of the tailpipe. When I see smoke, I'll go back and do a glow cycle, and that's how I know the injectors are firing. Make sure that connector is plugged in. The big boy right there. That's an important connector. Oh no! I forgot to put my little spouts on the oil, and the oil is going into my turbo. This piece right here is the oil spout. It redirects the oil from the exit hole on the injector and makes it go down. So it goes in through this hole, and then it goes down into basically back into the oil pan.
This is a lot more like normal cold start smoke.
Check the coolant level. One spout was not making oil. If there's no oil coming out, then that means the injector is not firing. I'm going to do the old switcheroo with the one next to it and see, because this is the one that won't make oil at the spout. So we're just going to put it here, see if the problem follows the injector. Maybe we'll try to convince the injector to work. Who knows? Don't know if you guys saw two separate squirts of vapor coming out of the engine. 1, 2, 1, 2. There's two glow plugs out. If one of those injectors is not firing, why is there diesel coming out? Interesting. We're gonna watch this thing a little bit closer. Now that they're switched, maybe it fixed itself. We got oil. It's a wonder. It's a miracle. It's a woman. You just pay a little attention to it and it starts working again just like it should. Oil is coming out the spout. What more can I do? I don't need an injector. Time for lunch. So basically, when it was all said and done on the injector cups alone, I was around $900 to $1,000 on Riffraff diesel. But Riffraff diesel has that rental tool that you can get. It's probably like $500–600 just for the rental tool. The cups are only a couple $100. The brush kit costs something. You have to get that tool because really, like the strike style tool, I don't know if I would trust it. The threaded style, it's mounted directly to the face where the injector mounts on. So you know it's got the right angle and everything going in. You know it's being pressed in. You know it's the correct amount of force. You don't have to like kind of listen and hear like the perfect tone when you're striking it with a hammer and potentially not make the cups go deep enough or something like that. You actually go until you feel those threads, and you know if you work on cars or trucks, you're familiar with the feeling of a thread that's basically gone as far as it can, and now you're putting force into the threads instead of advancing the screw. So you just go until it's bottomed out. You can tell when it's bottomed out and the resistance becomes much greater. It's a little bit more than 35 foot-pounds. You need that torque wrench. You'll also need the inch-pound torque wrench unless you're just going to guess on the injector hold-down bolts. But I like to have the torque wrenches around the shop, so I have them. But if you don't have them, then it's annoying because now you got to go out and buy something like that or potentially rent it, and that's more trouble and time. And
driving back and forth. But whatever your game is with this job, the ejector cups are not like rocket science to do. The piece basically threads in. It's kind of a simple concept. You just have to execute. And you have to get the valve covers off. You have to take out the injectors. You have to, if you follow the method that I showed for getting those injectors out, you'll have a lot less trouble. Well, mechanics will say, oh, I use a lady's foot. I use this type of pry bar, that type of pry bar. End of the day, the method I showed is the #1 best method. I don't know why nobody ever told that method to me when I was trying to do this the first time, but it really does make a world of difference. Get under that valve cover gasket and pry under the plate, and you can get the angle for every single injector. It's not that hard. It amazes me the amount of advice that's out there for working on these engines that necessarily makes it more difficult. You do have to have like a full set of tools. You have to have 8 mil, 10 mil, 13 mil, 4-inch drive, 3/8 drive. Electric helps a lot, speeds up the process, but you don't need it by any means. There's other tools you can use that'll expedite the process, like a little short, a 3/8 hat breaker bar. If you can find one, which is really rare now, you won't often see them, or you get like the swivel head ratchet where like the head is able to basically go straight like a screwdriver. And so then you can just use one of those for getting bolts out, and then if it's still tight, you go down and start ratcheting again. So that's a good style you can get that's modern, but it does the same thing. But the electric tools help a lot, and then ForeScan on your laptop helps a lot if you have that. If you don't, you could definitely run into some issues with diagnostic issues. You need the air compressor. I don't really know how I would get by without an air compressor. I remember when I started out, I did not have an air compressor, and it was a bear to clean stuff because it had to be done with a rag, and then you had to get something down in there to do the cleaning. And a lot of times just a quick blow with the air compressor is like equivalent to 5 or 10 minutes of cleaning with like brake cleaner and a rag. So, just a quick shot with the air compressor is all you need sometimes. You've got to have guts to get in and go back and do something the right way. These cups, it takes a little bit of guts to do this job because, especially if you've never done it before, you don't know, oh my gosh, are you serious? My mechanic said take the heads off and send them into a machine shop and they'll do the cups correctly. I'm willing to bet they probably just do the exact thing that I just did. They probably have a tool that threads out, threads in, and pulls them out. And then they probably have a tool that threads on there, and you screw it in to install the new injector cup. I wouldn't be surprised at all. That's probably, they use the exact same special tool. In any case, whatever they do in a machine shop, I don't really know if there's any way that it could be better than this method with the Riffraff tool. I don't agree with like the striking style tool. I think you could probably do a bad install with that. Cleaning out the bottoms of the injector cup bores is a little bit of a challenge because some of them, for some reason, are all crusty and black and full of carbon, and they will not come clean. And others of them are shiny and perfect as soon as you start brushing them. You break off a little carbon around the edges, and that's it. Well, it's very odd. I don't know how to discern why one would be filled with carbon and the other one wouldn't, except maybe during initial install, there was a speck of dirt. It didn't go down as far. There was a gap. And then the combustion was able to travel up through that gap and just fill that space with carbon. But it's, like I said, not that hard of a job. I mean, I've grown with my aptitude, so I've learned more about these engines, but this is my first time ever doing this job, and to be honest, it's really not, it's not like you're metalworking. You don't have to like throw something on a lathe and turn it. You don't have to write a CAD design and 3D print something. You just purchase the brush kit. You need the special brushes because that's how you get that perfect size where you can just reach down in there and brush it. And it'd be nice to have like a drill attachment style. There's probably one out there that is just a common generic tool of different like brush style, cup style brushes that you can throw on a drill and drill. But I don't have a kit like that, but that would probably be even faster for getting the carbon out. I just don't know if that would cause any damages to the little face where it mates up. But yeah, that brush kit, actually not very cheap, surprisingly, kind of expensive, but once you have it, you have it. And like I said, the rental tool, I assume they just charge you whatever it would cost them if you kept the tool. So it's probably just the purchase price of a new tool, much like when you rented O'Reilly's or something. But it's not a tool that you're just going to be able to find at the store. So you feel free to go looking around. You might be able to find a diesel shop that does this job, and you might be able to convince them to borrow it to you if you know them really well or something. But in my case, the mechanics that I was able to talk to didn't have the tool, and they just said like find it online and get it that way. But I'll send that back. I'll get my dough back. It'll probably be at the end of the day. I'll probably be out like $400. I can't give you an accurate like time frame of how long it takes because I was holding the camera and trying to give you guys good footage. So, but just so you guys know, I probably spent less than 8 hours total on this job. That special sealant has to dry for 12 hours. For some reason, you know, they call it retaining compound, but I'm almost positive that is the material that actually seals those cups so that nothing goes past like oil, you know, going into the coolant and stuff like that. But I do know that the cup is basically just isolating on the inside diesel, on the outside coolant, and then above oil. So like, I don't really think anybody ever talks about oil going into the coolant through the cups. Maybe if you didn't use the retaining compound right, maybe if you started too early, but that is where the oil is. It's up above that, so in that section from inside the cup. But it comes in above the cup because that's where it goes, it travels through the block, so it comes in above the cup, and then it kind of goes down into the injector around the area inside the cup prior to that seal. And then the next seal down is retaining like all the diesel. I probably worked on it for like 3 hours maybe yesterday, 3 or 4 hours. But you got to get the valve covers off, you got to get the injectors out, you got to get the glow plugs out, you got to have the tools. It's very hard to tell you how long it exactly took. If you had everything in place, everything ready to go, and then there's no problems, there's no little issues along the way, I mean, this job could probably be like a 2 or 3 hour job for the right guy. But, you know, Joe Blow like me, plan yourself 2 days, you know, give yourself like some extra time to run into troubles and problems. And then like right now I've got the truck running because I had to re-put the coolant into the truck, and so I need to make sure that the truck is, you know, bleeding out, burping the air, the coolant system, making sure it's not overheating, it doesn't have any bubbles in there. So it's actually supposed to be running with the cap off, and it's not. Yeah, I forgot to take the cap off, but I went back out there and took it off. Anyways, yeah, you got to give yourself a little time for, like, if you've never taken the valve covers off, you want to do a proper diagnosis. I have a YouTube short for diagnosing bad injector cups. You can check that out. Maybe I'll put a link to that in this video for you so you can click on that. What else can I tell you? Yeah, it takes a little time to drain the radiator fluid out. I was unable to get the little drain plugs out of the block. The Riffraff diesel instructions that come with the cup set tells you to take out the 1/4 inch drain plugs that are in the block under the heads. I could not get those plugs out. My 1/4 inch drive immediately stripped out that. I was very careful. I pushed it in all the way, and then I had like a converter to a 3/8 because my 1/4 inch I couldn't even turn it with that, and literally just stripped. So the only way to be able to get that out now would be to clean it really good and weld a nut onto it. I'm not too happy about that, but it's pretty much the story of all drain plugs. I mean, it's true on differentials. It's also true on transfer cases, you know, transmissions. Just all those pipe plugs, they always end up so super tight, and then they strip as soon as you try to get them out. So I just left them, but I had a bad injector cup, and so I actually had seen the coolant coming out through the cup into the combustion chamber because it was going down through the nozzle hole where the injector is supposed to be, and it was just squirting through the sides of the cup and going down in my test. So I knew that I had like coolant inside the combustion chamber. I'm hoping it didn't cause too many problems, but you know, I've got the truck running within a day, so I figure, I mean, how much rust could coolant cause? You know, probably not too much. If it was like constant exposure, then that would be a problem. Like the one injector had a problem with that. Yeah, pretty much. Don't be scared to do this job. It's a job that like a regular savvy person can do. You have to be semi-intelligent. I mean, you can't have done this as your first mechanic job ever. I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to get familiar with this engine and not be scared of it anymore, this is a good way to go about it. Because once you pull the glow plugs, you pull the injectors, I've showed you every trick I know, every lesson I know. Well, I've shown you most of the lessons. There's too many there that I've learned, but I'm trying to be discerning and share you the things that people maybe are lacking, or that you can't find, or there's not good advice for it online. Just be careful and be sensitive to the truck. You know, oh, if you can't, you know, the valve cover removal, I have the valve cover removals in another video too, so if you need to see that, I'll give you a link to that as well. And be patient with yourself. Don't try to race through on a job you've never done before. That will just be a bad recipe, especially on a job like this where there's a certain quality to this job where everything kind of has to be done nice. Everything has to be done attentively. I brought up those issues, the issues with the injectors getting a code, and maybe one injector wasn't spouting. I don't know why the one injector wouldn't spout, and it fixed itself, so I'm guessing it was probably just stiction. And I'm hoping that problem will go away now that there's no coolant getting in where it's not supposed to be. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Have a great day.